The detective closed the case file and pushed it across the desk. "Looks like we're done here. 3 weeks of investigation, 2 days of interviews, and one suspect sitting in the interrogation room who had just confessed." It felt finished, simple, clean. The kind of case police departments like to wrap up before the paperwork piles any higher. But across the room, one officer didn't move. He kept staring at a photograph clipped to the file. A single detail in the corner of that image, small, easy to miss, and completely wrong. Before we continue, subscribe to the Unheard Witness, because sometimes a case isn't solved when someone confesses. It's solved when something finally makes sense. The suspect sat quietly in the interrogation room. Name: Kevin Hale, 28 years old. No violent record. But tonight, he had admitted to something serious. A break-in at a local electronics warehouse. Security alarms triggered at 11:42 p.m. Thousands of dollars in equipment missing. The police had arrived minutes later, but the thief was gone. At first, there were no leads. Then a security camera captured someone leaving the alley behind the warehouse. Hood up, face partially hidden, but the jacket stood out. Bright blue, distinct. A patrol officer had spotted Kevin Hale wearing the same jacket the next morning. When questioned, Kevin panicked. His answers didn't line up, and after 2 hours in the interrogation room, he confessed. The detective leaned back in his chair. Case closed. But Officer Ramirez didn't share the relief. He was still staring at the photograph. "Something's wrong," he said quietly, at the detective's side. "What now?" Ramirez turned the photo around. This. The image showed the back alley behind the warehouse, taken by the security camera. The timestamp glowed at the top corner, 11:46 p.m. A figure walking away, blue jacket. The detective shrugged. "That's him." Ramirez nodded slowly. "Maybe." The detective raised an eyebrow. "You just heard him confess." Ramirez tapped the photograph. "I know." The detective leaned forward. "So, what's the problem?" Ramirez pointed to something near the edge of the frame. A parked car, headlights off, barely visible. The detective frowned. "So?" Ramirez looked at the timestamp again. Warehouse alarm went off at 11:42. "Yes." This photo was taken 4 minutes later. "Yes." Ramirez leaned back. "Then why is that car already parked there?" The detective stared at the image. The car sat perfectly still, in the alley. Not arriving, not leaving, just there. The detective shrugged again. "Maybe someone lives nearby." Ramirez shook his head. "No apartments back there." The detective frowned slightly. "So what?" Ramirez spoke carefully. "If Kevin ran out of the warehouse at 11:42, he tapped the photo again. Why would he walk past a car already waiting in the alley?" The detective paused. "Because criminals don't usually park getaway cars right beside a security camera, and they definitely don't walk casually past them." The detective rubbed his chin. "Maybe he didn't notice it." Ramirez shook his head. "The car is right in front of him." The detective leaned closer. The image wasn't perfect. Grainy, in night vision blur. But the car was definitely there. The detective exhaled slowly. "Maybe it belongs to someone else." Ramirez nodded. "Maybe." Then he added something else. "But Kevin never mentioned a car." The detective turned toward the interrogation room window. Kevin sat quietly on the other side of the glass, hands folded, looking exhausted. The detective stood. "Let's ask him." They entered the interrogation room again. Kevin looked up nervously. "I already told you everything." The detective sat across from him. Just one more question. Kevin nodded slowly. Okay. The detective slid the photograph across the table. You recognize this? Kevin glanced at it. That's the alley. Yes. And that's you. Kevin nodded reluctantly. Yes. The detective pointed to the car. What about that? Kevin leaned closer. His eyes narrowed. I don't remember that. Ramirez watched carefully. You didn't see a car when you left the warehouse? Kevin shook his head. No. None at all. No. Ramirez exchanged a glance with the detective. Because if Kevin was telling the truth, then someone else had been in that alley before him. The detective asked another question. How long were you inside the warehouse? Kevin hesitated. 10 minutes. 10? Maybe 15. The detective leaned back. So the car would have been there the entire time. Kevin looked confused. What car? Ramirez turned the photo toward him again. That one. Kevin stared at it longer this time, then shook his head again. I never saw that. The room went quiet, yet because either Kevin was lying or the confession wasn't telling the whole story. The detective left the interrogation room. Ramirez followed. Something's off, Ramirez said. The detective nodded slowly. Yeah. They returned to the evidence room, pulled up the full security footage. The alley camera recorded continuously. Ramirez scrubbed backward through the video timeline. 11:46 p.m. The same frame from the photograph. Blue jacket. Kevin walking away. But the car remained parked. Ramirez rewound further. 11:45. Car still there. 11:44. Still there. 11:43. Still there. The detective leaned closer. Go back more. Ramirez did. 11:41. The car rolled slowly into the alley. Headlights off. Engine running. The detective stared at the screen. That's before the alarm. Ramirez nodded. Exactly. The car had arrived before the break-in even started, which meant something important. Someone had been waiting. The video continued. The driver door opened slightly. A figure stepped out, but the camera angle only showed a shadow. Then the figure disappeared toward the warehouse entrance. The detective's voice lowered. That's not Kevin. Ramirez shook his head. No. Because Kevin entered the building from the front. The patrol cameras had confirmed that earlier. But this person had approached from the alley. The detective felt the weight of the mistake. They had focused entirely on the man in the blue jacket. But the real story might have started earlier. Ramirez zoomed in on the car. The license plate was blurry, but one digit was visible, a number 8. The detective straightened. Oh, run vehicle records for dark sedans with an 8 in the plate near that area. Ramirez nodded. Minutes later, the system returned a match. Registered owner, Marcus Dale. The detective's jaw tightened. Marcus Dale, warehouse night manager, the man who reported the break-in.